Dynamic data validation is a game changer in Excel. At the basic level, it controls what a user can enter or cannot enter in a cell. It also makes data entry easier and ensures the integrity of your worksheet by avoiding typing errors when users can simply select an option from a drop list. However, in a more advanced scenario, drop lists can make a regular worksheet look as a dynamic dashboard. In this tutorial, we explore the full potential of drop lists by creating basic drop lists, diminishing drop lists, and then we create dependent drop lists with up to 6 levels of dependency. We will learn about the extreme power of combining drop lists with dynamic array functions and touch the limit of what data validation can do. I am Nabil Mourad. Let me tell you about this nice high-rise building of 35 floors and 8 units on each floor. While most units in this building are owned, there are few rental units. The building is well maintained due to the monthly fees each resident must pay, besides some other individual repair charges on some units. The Property Management Board wants to track the amounts paid by owners and whether there are amounts past due or maybe overpayment. To easily retrieve the information, they need a simple yet powerful dynamic way to search by floor, by suite number, or by residence name. I envisioned a solution that uses a set of drop lists with up to 6 levels of dependency that can extract the information by any combination of search criteria. So let's build this project from ground up in Excel. Here is my start file. You can download the exercise file and follow along. You can also read my step-by-step guide that maps to this tutorial and is also available for you to download. The Property Management Board shared this spreadsheet with sample data, where I have a list of 23 columns and 274 rows. The columns store the floor, the suite number, the resident name, the type, whether owned or rental, a phone number, the maintenance fees, the repair fees, 12 months collection, and then I have the total paid, the total due, the past due, if any, and the overpayment, if any. Rental units pay their obligations with post-dated checks, so we are mainly concerned about tracking payments for owned units. We will create our solution in the same worksheet, in the range Y1 AD3, where I just created some labels in row number 2. We also need to have a preparation area, which is the real kitchen where we prepare for our work. My preparation area will be to the right side of column AF. I just colored some ranges and added some labels to organize my work. I start my project by creating my first basic drop list in cell Y2 that will replace the static content that I have right now. And this drop list will enable the user to initiate the search by floor, by suite number, or by residence name. So I select the cell Y2, and then I go to the Data tab of the ribbon, and to the right side of the Data tab, I click on Data Validation. The Data Validation dialog box opens, and I would like to allow a list, so I click on the down pointing arrow under Allow. I select List, and I put my blinking cursor in the source box. I'll be selecting the values from the worksheet in the range from AG2 to AG4 in my preparation area. And to guide the user what to provide, then I'll be creating an input message, and this input message consists of a title, select an option to start searching. But because the title has a limit of 32 characters, so I'm going to truncate it and just type select an option to start search. I will type my input message, which will read, you can initiate your search either by floor, suite number, or residence name. I go back to the Settings tab in preparation for the next use of the same dialog box, and then I hit OK, and I would have created my first drop list. Here is the input message to guide the user, and if you click on the down pointing arrow, you have the three options, floor, suite, and resident. I want to create a second drop list in Z2 that will look at the first drop list. If the first drop list is displaying floor, then the second drop list will display the remaining two options, suite and resident. The second drop list will always exclude the content of cell Y2, my first drop list. And to do that, I need to prepare. So I go to the preparation area, and I want to use a COUNTIF function, equal COUNTIF, and then I hit tab. I want to count the content of cell Y2, and then I hit comma, and I'll be comparing it to floor, suite, and resident. So I select the entire range. So I close the bracket, and then I hit enter and look what happens. Without having to copy, the function spilled to the adjacent cells. I want to convert the ones and zeros into trues and false, so I'm going to select the first cell because actually my function lives only in the top cell. I put it in the edit mode by hitting F2 and I ask, is it less than 1? When I hit enter, I was able to convert the ones and zeros into trues and false, and I'm going to use this function inside a filter dynamic array function. The filter dynamic array function will exclude the value if it's false, and it will keep the value if it's true, and this is what I need in preparation for creating my second dynamic dependent drop list. So I can put my function in the edit mode one more time by hitting F2. I can cut this part to make it easier to understand, Control X to cut, and then I'll be creating my filter function, equal filter, and then I hit tab. What would you like to filter? I would like to filter these three values in column AG, and then I hit comma. The screen tip asks me what would you like to include. Then I'm going to paste my COUNTIF function, Control V, and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, it returns the two values that are different from my selection in cell Y2. And now I can use the result of my filter function for creating my second drop list. I select cell Z2, and this time I can bring the data validation dialog box by using the shortcut Alt-DL, Tab-L-Tab. My blinking cursor is in the source box. Then I click on the top cell having my filter function. I just use the spilled array symbol, the number sign. It's Shift 3 on your keyboard, and this means go ahead and select the entire spilled array range. I also want to guide the user by typing an input message, and then I hit OK, and now I can test. Now I have floor. Then if I look at the second drop list, here is the input message, and the contents of the drop list are the two other options. These are the returned values from the filter dynamic array function. Now I want to create my third drop list. And my third drop list will be in cell Y3. This drop list will look at the cell above, the first drop list, and it will display a list of floors, or a list of suites, or a list of residents' name based upon our selection in the first drop list. Creating this drop list requires some preparation, so I have to switch to my preparation area. In my preparation area, starting from AG19, I would like to create a filter function that will return a list of floors only for the owned units. And then in AH19, I'll be using a similar function to extract a list of suites only for the owned units, and then in cell AI19, I'll be extracting a list of residence names only for the owned units. So let's do that. I select cell AG19, and then I type an equal sign. I type filter, and what would you like to filter? I'm going to scroll to the very left. So for now, I'm selecting the first floor in cell A3, and then I hit the shortcut Shift Control down arrow. And to go back to the function without locking, because I don't need to lock in a dynamic array function, so I hit Control backspace and it takes me back to my function. I hit comma. What's your condition? My condition is in the type, so I need to select the entire range, and I'll be including only the owned units. So I go back, and in column D, I start by selecting the first value, Shift Control down arrow, and then Control backspace to jump to the function. I type an equal sign. Is it equal to owned? And I close the double quotation, and I close the bracket for the filter function. I create the function once in the top cell, and it will spill to the adjacent cells when I hit enter. Here is the result of my filter function. For the suites, equal filter. I hit tab. What would you like to filter? I want to filter column B, having the suite column starting from B3. Shift Control down arrow, Control backspace, and then I hit comma. What's your condition? My condition is in column D, so I select the top value in column D, Shift Control down arrow, Control backspace, and then I ask, is it equal to owned? In double quotation, I type owned and double quote, and I close the bracket. My function spills down, extracting the suite numbers just for the owned units. I'll be repeating one last time for the residents. The list of suite numbers that I extracted will be used in my third drop list. I will also use the list of residence name, because none of these two lists has duplicate values. But if you look at the floor, it has lots of duplicates. So I need to extract a list having no duplicates for the floor, a list having unique values for the floor. And to do that, I'll be using a unique dynamic array function. I select my destination cell, AM3, and I'll be using a unique dynamic array function, equal unique, and then I hit tab. Where is the range? I'm extracting a list of floors. I need one single occurrence of each floor. So I go to the very left. I select the first value under floor, Shift Control down arrow and Control backspace to jump back to my function. I close the bracket. If I hit enter at this point, it will extract a list of unique floors. We have 35 floors, and they will be returned as a column. I want to return them as a row, so I'm going to wrap this function in another function, another dynamic array function that will switch the column into row. The name of this function is the transpose function. And then I hit tab, and I close the bracket. And when I hit enter, I would have extracted a unique list of floors that goes all the way to the right to column BT. I want to copy the same function one more time, and I paste my function Control V, and I get the same exact list. Having a unique list of floor, whether in AM3 or AM13, and having a unique list of suite numbers in column AH, starting from AH19, and having a unique list of residents in AI19, now I have all the data I need for creating my third drop list. Let's understand what the third drop list will be doing. The third drop list that I'll be creating in Y3 will look at the cell above. It will return one of three lists. If it reads floor above, it will return a unique list of floors. If it reads suite, it will return a unique list of suites. If it reads residence, it will return a unique list of resident name. We need to put these three options in a container, and this container will be the switch function. Let me create it outside, and then we'll put it in our data validation dialog box. I'm going to create my function in AH13, and I'll be typing equal switch, and then I hit tab. The switch function requires an expression. It will look at the cell above, which is cell Y2. And because this cell might have one of three options, for each option, it will return a different function. Option number 1, in double quotes, I type floor. If it reads floor, what do you want? Then I want the entire list of floor. Where do I get it from? I go to my function that I created in AM3. And because I don't want only the first value, I need the entire spilled array range. So I type Shift 3, the spilled array symbol, the number sign, which will return the entire range that we extracted with the transpose and unique function. I hit comma. What's the second option that you can see in Y2? It will be sweet. In double quotation, I type sweet, and then I close the double quote. In this case, what do you want? I need the entire spilled array range that we extracted with the filter function starting from AH19, and then I type the spilled array symbol, and then comma, the last option. In double quotes, I type resident. I close the double quotation and then I hit comma. If the option in Y2 is resident, then in this case I want the entire list of residents, and I type my spilled array symbol and then I close the bracket for the switch function. This is the function that will be switching the contents of the third drop list based upon the drop list above in cell Y2. I want to park this function and disable it, so I click before the equal sign and I type the single quotation. I just created it here for demonstration. I could create it directly in the data validation dialog box. Let me copy the function without the single apostrophe, and now I want to create my third drop list using the switch function. I go to my destination cell, and my destination cell will be cell Y3. I bring the data validation dialog box by using the shortcut Alt-D, L-Tab, L-Tab, and then here in the source box, I'll be pasting my function. I hit OK, and now let's test. I click on the down pointing arrow, and now because I have floor in the cell above, I have a list of floors. What if I change from floor, I select suite? I can test one more time. I have a list of suites. What if I change instead of suite, I have resident? I test one more time, and now I have a list of residents. So I created a dependent drop list with 3 levels of dependency, and we are switching lists by using the switch function. We need to prepare for creating our next drop list. Our next drop list is the most robust one because it depends upon a combination of 2 lists. Now let's select floor in Y2, let's select suite in Z2, and here I have a list of floors, and to proceed with this exercise, I'm going to select as an example, let's say floor number 1. And because I'm selecting floor number 1, I need my fourth drop list to look at the floor and extract a unique list of suites only for the owned suites. In other terms, the contents of the fourth drop list will depend upon the combination of the first and second drop list. And here are the different options. For each one of these options, I'll be creating a dynamic array function, and then I'll be combining the 6 functions together in one big switch function that I'll be using for creating my data validation drop list in cell Z3, which is my fourth drop list. So let's go to the preparation area and start to prepare for that. I'm selecting cell AM4, and because I previously extracted a unique list of floors in row number 3, I want to extract the corresponding suite number under each floor. But I just want to extract the suite number for the owned suites, and I use a filter function for doing this with 2 conditions, equal filter, and then I hit tab. What would you like to filter? I want to extract a list of suites, so I go to the left, I select the first value under suite, shift control down arrow, and then I hit F4 to lock it and jump back. And note here I'm hitting F4 because this function will spill in one single direction, which is down, and I want to copy it for the other floors. Then I have to lock the range. And then I hit comma. Now I open bracket for my first condition. My first condition is for the floor. Then I go to the left one more time. I'm selecting the first value under floor. Shift Control down arrow F4 to lock it and jump back. And I'm asking, is it equal the cell above, which is AM3, the floor coming from the previous function? I close the bracket. And my second condition, which should be met at the same time, so I type a multiplication symbol, which is equal to the AND operator, and then I open bracket, and my second condition will be the owned suites, so I need to select the type. In column D, I select the first value, Shift Control down arrow, F4 to lock it, and I type an equal sign. In double quotes, I type owned, and I close the double quotes. I close the bracket for the second condition, and I close the bracket for the filter function. When I hit enter, my function spills down. Now I want to copy this function all the way to the 35th floor, and you will note that the number of suites returned are different in each floor, depending on how many owned units we have on that floor. I want to do the same exact thing in cell AM14, but this time I want to extract the resident name. I have the floor above, and I'll be using another filter function. And I get a list of residents' names just for the owned suites, and now I'm going to copy my function all the way to the 35th floor. Now we are ready to start creating our 6 dynamic array functions. Combination number 1, floor suite. So I have in Y2 a floor, I have in Z2 I have a suite number, and I selected floor number 1 in Y3, and I want to see the available owned suites in that floor, which should be this list. And I'll be using an XLOOKUP function to get this list, equal XLOOKUP, and then I hit tab. The XLOOKUP function will look at the floor in cell Y3, and then I hit comma. Where does it look for it? Where is the lookup array? The lookup array is in the cell above, but not one single cell, all the spilled array up to suite number 35. So I type Shift 3, the spilled array symbol, and then I hit comma. What would you like to extract? The returned array depends upon the selected floor. And to do that, I'm going to use an offset function. So I type offset, and then I hit tab. The offset function requires a starting point, and my starting point will be the cell above, all the spilled array for AM3. So I type the spilled array symbol. I want to move one single row down, so I type comma 1. I don't want to move any column right and left, so I type comma 0, and then I close the bracket for the offset function, and I close the bracket for the XLOOKUP function. When I hit enter, because I have floor number 1 selected, then it will return the first suite in the list. So when I hit enter, look at that, it's returning the first suite in the list. What if I change the floor, and instead of floor number 1, I'm selecting floor number 2, automatically I get the first floor in the list. I don't want just the first floor in the list, I want the entire list, because this will be the content of my drop list in case I have this combination floor and suite. So I put my function in the edit mode one more time, and at the very end of my function, after the closing bracket, I type a second spilled array symbol, Shift 3 on my keyboard. Now look at that, I'm extracting the entire list. I finished creating my first function, I put it in the edit mode, and before the equal sign, I type a single quotation just to park the function in this cell. My next function has the same concept. When I select a floor, I want the list of resident name. The combination is floor and resident. I could use the same function one more time, but let me show you another technique. This time I'm going to use an offset function with a match function, equal offset, and then I hit tab. For the offset function, I need a starting cell, and my starting cell will be AM13, and I hit comma. The second argument, how many rows up and down would you like to move? Because I want the resident name, so I type 1. to move to the first name, and then I hit comma, the last argument of the offset function. How many columns right and left would you like to move? That all depends upon my selection in the drop list in Y3. So to do that, I'm going to use a match function. So I'll type match, and then I hit tab. I look at cell Y3. I type comma. Where would you like to match it? I want to match it in the entire spilled array of floors starting from AM13. So I click on AM13, I type Shift-3, the spilled array symbol, and then I hit comma. Are you looking at an exact match less than or greater than? I type 0 for exact match, and I close the bracket for the match function, and I close the bracket for the offset function. This function right now is looking at floor number 2. So I'm expecting the name of Mr. and Mrs. Cuenta to be returned. Look what happens when I hit enter. It's returning the next one. The match function is adding to the starting point, so I need to subtract 1. I put my function in the edit mode F2, and then before the closing bracket of the offset function, I type -1. Now when I hit enter, I get the correct name, the first resident name in floor number 2. Do you want only the first name? No, I want the entire list of names. Then let's put our function one last time in the edit mode by hitting F2, and let's add one more spilled array symbol at the end. Now if I hit enter, I get the full list, and I created my second function for the combination floor and resident. Let's put this function in the edit mode F2. Let's type a single quotation and park it here until we combine it with the other functions in the switch function. My next function depends upon the combination suite and floor. So I'll go to my first drop list and I select suite. And then here I'm going to select floor. And for the suite, I'm going to change it. Let's select suite number 102. And now let's work with this combination. Having a suite number, I want to return a floor. That's very easy. It's an XLOOKUP function that will look at the preparation table in the purple area. So let's create this function, equal XLOOKUP, and then I hit tab. All my functions look at the drop list in Y3. That's my lookup value. And then I hit com. Where do you look for it? This is a suite number. Then I select the first suite under suites, the dynamic array function that I created earlier, and I refer to the entire list by typing Shift-3, the spilled array symbol. What do you want to return? I'm looking at a combination of suite and floor. I want to return the floor. Then I select the first floor, AG19, type a spilled array symbol, close the bracket, and that will return the entire list of floors. Let me hit enter and test. Now I get the floor corresponding to the selected suite number. The suite number we selected is 0102. That's on the first floor. Let's put the function in the edit mode and park it. So I'll be typing a single quotation. Let's go to the next option. My next option is suite and resident. So if I select resident from the second drop list, then I want to get the name of the owner of this suite. So I'll be creating another XLOOKUP function, and I'll be using the data preparation in the purple area one more time, equal XLOOKUP, and then I hit tab. I'm always looking at cell Y3, comma. This is a suite number. Then I select the first suite, Shift-3 on my keyboard, and then I hit comma. I want a resident name. I select the first resident and then the spilled array symbol, and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, I get the name of the owner 0102, Mr. and Mrs. Leroux. Let's park this function. I hit F2. Click at the beginning and type a single quotation to park it. And then the last combination is resident suite and resident floor. So let's select the option here and select a resident. And then let's change 102 and select a resident name. So here I should be getting the suite number corresponding to that resident. And that's another XLOOKUP function, equal XLOOKUP. Same exact concept. I'm looking at cell Y3. I hit comma. This is the resident name. So I select the first resident in the spilled array of residents in the purple area. type the spilled array symbol, type comma. What do you want to return? I want to return a suite. So I click on the first suite, the spilled array symbol, close the bracket, and then hit enter. That's correct. Let's park this function, put it in the edit mode, and type a single quotation at the beginning, and then hit enter. My last function will look at the resident and return the floor. That's the last xlookup function equal xlookup. I hit tab. I look at Y3 as we did 3 times before, and then where do you look for it? This is a resident name, so I select the first resident and then type Shift 3, the spilled array symbol. I type comma. What do you want to return? I want to return a floor. I select the first floor and then Shift 3 and I close the bracket and then I hit enter. That's fine. It's working correctly. Then I put it in the edit mode and park this function. After creating the 6 dynamic array functions, I want to combine them all together in one single switch function. And the concept of the switch function, as we learned earlier, that it will look at the combination that we have in Y2 and Z2. If the combination is floor-suite, then we need the first function. If it is floor-resident, we need the second, and so on. And I'll end up by creating a huge switch function. This switch function will look like this. This function consists of 281 characters. That's a problem because the data validation dialog box cannot accept more than 255 characters. How can I squeeze this function in order to go below the maximum limit of 255 characters? Then I'm going to create an abbreviation of the names returned by Y2 and Z2. And this abbreviation will match what you see in column AH. So instead of using floor-suite, I'm going to use the leftmost character FS. Instead of using suite and floor, I'm going to use SF. That will reduce the size of my switch function so that it can be accepted in my data validation drop list. How to do this? I need to create a VLOOKUP function in a helper cell. So I'm going to unhide some columns, right-click and unhide, select cell AA, and I want to create a VLOOKUP function that extracts the abbreviated name. This is what I'll be using in my switch function. So I'll be typing equal VLOOKUP, and my VLOOKUP function will look at cell Y2, and then I type and Shift 7 on my keyboard, and then a dash, double quote, dash, double quote, and then another joining operator, Shift 7 on my keyboard, and then I select Z2. The combination of Y2 dash Z2, that's my lookup value. Where do you look for it? I type comma. I look for it in this table array from AG6 to AH11. That's my lookup array. And then I hit comma. In case you find it, from which column you need a return value, I need a return value from column 2, the abbreviation, and then I type comma. It's an exact match, so I type 0, and then I close the bracket. Right now, I have the combination resident and suite. Let's hit enter. It's returning RS. Using this abbreviation, I'll be able to shorten my switch function. So the switch function will look at the contents of cell AA1, and accordingly, it will be returning one of the 6 functions we created in column AI. To make my life easier when creating my switch function, I need to copy the 6 functions to the clipboard without the single quotation. So let's do that. I go to the Home tab, I open my Office clipboard, I clear whatever I have, and then I start copying. I start from function number 6, moving to the top. I select the function without the single quotation, without the equal sign, and I hit copy. I'll be doing it for the other 5 functions. I copied the 6 functions to the Office clipboard. Now I want to create my switch function. I'll be temporarily creating it in cell AH14, this is the function that I'll be using in my last drop list, equal switch. The switch function will be looking at my VLOOKUP function in cell AA1, and based upon the abbreviated name, it will be returning one of the 6 functions. So I type comma, in double quote I type the first option, fs, and then comma, and I paste the first function from my Office clipboard. Then comma, in double quotes I type the second combination, fr, and then comma, and I paste the second function, and then comma, in double quotes I type the third combination, sf, and then comma, and I paste the third function, and then comma, my fourth option will be sr, double quote, comma, and I paste the fourth function, and then comma, in double quotes, option number 5, which is rs, and then double quote, and then I hit comma, I paste function number 5, then another comma, and in double quotes, I type the last option, rf, and then double quote, comma, and I paste the last function from the Office clipboard. Parking functions and copying them to the Office clipboard made it easy for me creating my switch function. If I park this function by typing a single quotation, then I hit enter, I'll be creating a length function just to check the length of the function above, equal length, and then I hit tab of the cell above and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, I get 209. That means this function will be accepted in my data validation drop list. I can close the Office clipboard for now. Now I want to copy the switch function. I can expand the formula bar. Control-Shift-U is the shortcut. So I'm going to copy the switch function, excluding the single quotation. Control-C to copy it. Let's collapse the formula bar. Control-Shift-U another time. And now let's create our fourth and last robust drop list. I create it in cell Z3. I hit the shortcut Alt-DL and then Tab L tab, and here I'll be pasting my switch function. Let's hit OK, and now let's test. I have a resident and I want the suite number. So if I click on the drop list, here is the suite number of that resident. Let's change. I'll be changing from resident to floor. And I'll be selecting a floor. Let it be floor number 1. What are the suites available in floor number 1? Only the owned suites. Here is a list of the owned suites in floor number 1. If I change the floor and I select floor number 4, here is a list of suites available in floor number 4. If I change this and I make it resident, now I can extract a list of residents from the 4th floor, and my robust switch function is working just fine. When I have values selected in Y3 and Z3, like a floor and a resident name, and then I change my search criteria, I go to Y2, and then I say I want to search by suite, and then for the suite I want the resident name. Now look at Y3, the floor number is still there, which means whenever I make a change in Y2 or Z2, I need to clear the contents of Y3 and Z3 automatically in preparation for making a new selection. And in order to do that, I need to create an event code that clears the contents of Y3 and Z3 whenever I make a change in Y2 and Z2. To create an event code, I need to go to the Sheet tab, and then I right-click and select View Code. My Visual Basic Editor opens, and in the Visual Basic Editor, I need to create an event code. So I click on the drop list to the upper left side, and then I select Worksheet. Automatically, an event code is created. That's not the one I want. I want the change event, not the selection change event. So on the upper right side, I have another drop list. From this drop list, I select change, and here is the change event that I need. I can go and delete the previous event. between the private sub and end sub, I'll be writing my instructions. So I'm going to minimize a little bit, and now I can see in the background the destination cells. I want to say in my code, if I make a change in Y2 or Z2, if my target is in the range Y2 and Z2, then go ahead and clear the contents of Y3 and Z3. How do I do that? I'm going to write a simple code. This code says, if there is an intersection between the target and the range Y2 and Z2, is nothing has been reversed by the word not. This is how we write it. If not intersect target, range Y2, Z2 is nothing, then go ahead and clear the contents of the range Y3 and Z3. And then I close the if statement with an end if. I can improve the appearance of my code by indenting it. Let's go back and test. I'm closing my Visual Basic editor, and let's go and make a change. I'm going to select a floor, and look what happens. I cleared the contents of these two cells. What we did so far is the interactivity part. 4 powerful dynamic dependent drop lists. But the goal is to be able to get insights about the source data. And that's why I need to extract the total paid, the total due, the past due, and the overpayment based upon one of two options. I cannot extract by floor because for each floor I have multiple suites and multiple residents, so I have many options. But I can extract this information for a specific suite or for a specific resident name. And to do that, I need to create a VLOOKUP function that either searches by suite number or by resident name. So let's have a look at the source data before we create our VLOOKUP function that will take the lookup value, whether it's a suite number or a resident name, and accordingly extract the information from columns T, U, V, and W. I'm going to scroll back and just reveal the column numbers because when we use a VLOOKUP function, we decide the column index number at the third argument from which we need a return value. So I'm going to unhide these columns, right-click and unhide. And I'm going to change the column letters by numbers. To do that, I go to the File tab, I click on Options. In the Options dialog box, I click on Formula and then switch to the R1C1 reference. Now I can see the column numbers here at the top. I'll be searching in one of the VLOOKUP functions by the suite. That will be the left column of my table array. And in the second one, I'll be searching by the resident name. When I start searching by the suite and I want to extract a value from column T, then column T will be, which is right now number 20, but because I'm not starting from the leftmost column, it will be number 19. And when I start searching by the resident name, then the total paid will be column number 18. Keeping this piece of information in mind, once I need to extract from column 19, the second time I need to extract from column number 18. And I'm ready to create my VLOOKUP function. Remember that when I use the suite as a lookup value, I need a return value from column number 19. And when I use the resident, I need the first return value total paid from column number 18. Let's go and create our VLOOKUP function, equal VLOOKUP, and then I hit tab. What's your lookup value? Right now it's the suite, and then I lock it because I'm copying to the right. I hit F4 to lock it, and then I hit comma. What's your table array? My table array is from B3. Column B is the lookup column, and then I drag all the way to overpayment, which is column W, and I want to go down to the end, shift control down arrow, and then I hit F4 to lock it and jump back. Then I hit comma. From which column you need a return value? I'm extracting from the total paid. As we agreed, this is column 19. And then I hit comma. It's an exact match, so I type 0 and I close the bracket. When I hit enter, I was able to extract the amount for suite 203. Here is the amount for suite 203, and that's correct. I have to think, how can I copy it to the right? What will change when I copy it to the right? Let me put it in the edit mode one more time. The only thing that will change is this third argument, the 19, it should become 20, 21, 22 to be able to copy it to the right. And in order to increment to the right, I'm going to replace this 19 by 1 plus 18. Now if I hit enter, I'm getting the same exact result. And what I'm going to do next is to replace the static number 1 by a function that increments. It will return 1 for the total paid, then it will increment to 2 for the total due, 3 for the past due, and 4 for the overpayment. And for each one of these numbers, I'll be adding the 18. What's the name of this function? The name of this function is the columns function. So I put my function in the edit mode one more time by hitting F2, and then I select this one, and I'm going to replace it with a function that increments as I copy to the right, the columns function. The columns function requires selecting a cell and the same cell one more time. You can select any cell you like. I'm selecting cell X1, and then I hit Shift colon to select the same cell one more time, and then I close the bracket. From X1 to X1, that's one single cell, but if I lock the first reference by hitting F4, now as I copy to the right, that will create an incremental number, and my function can be copied to the right. When I hit enter, I get the same result, but I can drag to copy the function to the right just to make sure that my function is working fine. That's wonderful. Let me copy this function without the equal sign and save it to the Office clipboard. I can now delete, change my search criteria. I want to search by resident. Now I'm selecting any floor, and I'm selecting any resident, and I would like to create my second VLOOKUP function. So I'll be typing equal VLOOKUP. This time my lookup value will be the resident name. I lock it because I'm copying to the right. My lookup array will be from column C, and then I expand my range all the way down, Shift Control down, arrow F4 to lock it and jump back. I'm in the third argument. The third argument in this case should be 18, so I'm going to use my columns function one more time, columns, and then I hit tab. I'm selecting any cell, and I hit Shift colon one more time to select the same cell. I close the bracket. I lock the first cell reference. That will be returning 1. So I need to add for the column index number plus 17. I hit comma. And now I'm in the last argument of the VLOOKUP function. I type 0 for an exact match, and then I hit enter, and I would have created my second VLOOKUP function. If I click and drag, my function is working just fine. So we created two VLOOKUP functions. And because we want either to search by suite number or by resident name, then I want to combine them together. So keep an eye on the formula bar. I'm going to combine them by using an if error function. Before the second VLOOKUP function, I type if error, and then I hit tab. I click at the end, I type a comma, and paste my previous VLOOKUP function, Control V. Now I have the two functions combined together. To populate my function, I hit Control Enter. With the two functions available to use, whether we are searching by suite number or we are searching by resident name, what if by coincidence the user selects a floor in cell Z3? So if I change my search criteria and I select a floor, that's not relevant because in one single floor, I have multiple suites, multiple residents, so I cannot extract one single line of information. I want to disable this option and draw the attention of the user, so I'm going to wrap all these functions in a second if error function. So I click after the equal sign and I type if error, and what I mean by the second if error, if the user selects a floor, then in this case, I'm going to type a comma at the end and say, in double quotations, many options. I close the double quotation and close the bracket for the second if error function and hit Control Enter, and my function is working fine. Let's apply some formatting. These are all monetary values, so I'm going to format them as currency. The shortcut is Ctrl-Shift-4 for currency formatting, and on the Home tab, I'm reducing the number of decimals, so I just want to keep one single decimal place, and then I'm going to expand. Now I can see all the numbers. That's wonderful. I need to apply also some conditional formatting. So if there is an amount past due, I want it to be in red. If there is an overpayment, I want it to be in green. Let's start with the amount past due. For the conditional formatting on the Home tab, I click on Conditional Formatting, highlight Cell Rule, greater than. If the amount is greater than 0, I want it to be highlighted in red. I accept the default and hit OK. What about the overpayment? Click on Conditional Formatting, highlight Cell Rule, greater than. If the amount is greater than 0, then I want to highlight it in a different color, and I'll make it green this time, and then I hit OK. Let's test with another resident to reveal the green formatting for someone having an overpayment, and it's working just fine. Let's hide the contents of cell AA1. I don't need to see it, so I'm going to change the color to white. The next thing I want to do is to create a functionality that lets me focus on this part from Y1 down to AE3. This is the area that the user will be using all the time. So I'm going to create a zooming functionality that will zoom in or zoom out on this range. To create this zooming functionality, I'm going to create two icons here. So I go to the Insert tab of the ribbon, and I want to insert two icons. And because it's zooming, I'm searching for a proper icon, so I type zoom. And when I type zoom, I'll be using this magnifying lens and that one for zooming in and out. I hit insert. Here are the two icons. I could resize them. I resized and positioned the icons. I can flip this one by clicking on the rotate and select flip horizontal. I can change the color and make it like orange, and change the color of the zooming out icon and make it like green. And now I have the two icons in place, but they are not functioning. So I'll be creating a simple code and attach it to each one of these so I can zoom in and zoom out. To create this code, I want to switch to my Visual Basic Editor. So I hit Alt F11. In my Visual Basic Editor, I need to insert a module, so I go to the Insert menu and select Module, and in this module, I'll be creating a very simple code that will select this range from Y1 to AE3, and then it will zoom on this range. We can call this code anything like range zoom. I created the code, and it says, look at sheet named Start, and select the range Y1 AE3, dot select. For the active window, dot zoom, set it to true, and then select Y1. That's the zoom in. What about the zoom out? I'm going to create another code, sub, and I'll call it unzoom. I hit enter, and I'm going to copy the same exact code. There is one single line to change. I paste it between the two lines, the sub and the end sub, Control V. All what I need to do is to change the true to false, and I would have created my two codes. Now I close my Visual Basic Editor to go back to Excel, and in Excel I want to attach the two sub-procedures to the two buttons and test. So I select the first icon, the zoom in icon, I right-click, I select Assign Macro, and here I select the range zoom, and then hit OK. I select the second icon, the zoom out, right-click, assign macro, and select unzoom, and then hit OK, and I would have created the full functionality for zooming. Let's deselect and test. So if I click on the zoom in, this is how it looks like. If I click on the zoom out, this is how it looks like. I'm looking for someone who has an overpayment, so maybe this one, and here you go. We finished creating our project. We created 4 drop lists. We used lots of dynamic array functions, and we combined functions together by using the switch function. We touched the limit of what the data validation dialog box can accommodate. We combined the functionality with simple codes and some conditional formatting. And now we have a nice project to return to the property management board so that they are able to track the revenue and payments by any search criteria they need. I hope you found value in this presentation. And until we meet in another learning adventure, that was Nabil Mourad, the office instructor. Thank you for watching and see you next time.